Welcome, everyone. Today, we are diving deep into a really fascinating phase 2 trial that just dropped in the New England Journal of Medicine. We're talking about a potential once-a-month injectable for obesity, and believe me, it introduces a very compelling and honestly, a kind of confusing new twist in the whole incretin therapy story.
So, let's just start with the big scientific question here, the one that I know is on a lot of your minds. It's this. We have tirzepatide, a GIP agonist, and it's incredibly effective for weight loss, no question. But now we have this new compound that is a GIP antagonist, and it's also showing some profound efficacy. This is what we're calling the GIP paradox, and this trial really pulls it out of the lab and puts it right in front of us in the clinic.
And this is the drug at the center of it all, Maridebart cafraglutide, or MariTide. Now, this thing is a really unique piece of engineering. It's a peptide antibody conjugate, so you've got two GLP-1 analogs for that powerful agonism, and they're attached to a monoclonal antibody that actually blocks the GIP receptor. And that unique structure, it's the key to everything, both its mechanism and its incredibly long duration of action.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about that monthly dosing schedule. Then, we are going to unpack that really novel GIP antagonist mechanism. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the efficacy data, look at the safety and tolerability, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key clinical takeaways.
Okay, let's get into it. Because really, from a practical standpoint for our patients and for our clinics, the biggest headline here is the potential for monthly dosing. I mean, this could be a massive leap forward from the weekly shots we're all used to.
So how does it do it? Well, that monoclonal antibody backbone is the key. It gives the drug a half-life of around 21 days. And the clinical implication of that? It's huge. Think about it. Going from 52 injections a year down to just 12 could completely change the treatment burden for our patients. This could be a game changer for long-term adherence and persistence, which, as we all know, are two of the biggest hurdles we face in managing obesity as a chronic disease.
All right, now for the really cool science. This mechanism is what makes MariTide so different, and it directly challenges some of the things we thought we understood, especially when we think about a drug like tirzepatide, Zepbound. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. Both of these drugs are potent GLP-1 receptor agonists. That's the common ground. But the big difference is the GIP receptor. Tirzepatide activates it, while MariTide blocks it. The fact that both of these opposite actions, when you pair them with GLP-1 agonism, lead to major weight loss, well, that's the paradox we have to figure out.
And hey, it's not just us scratching our heads. The study's own authors say it right there in the paper. This quote basically confirms we're at a brand new frontier. People are throwing around hypotheses. Maybe it's about central versus peripheral GIP signaling, or maybe GIP receptor desensitization, but honestly, we just don't know yet. What we do know for sure is that this trial gives us the first really solid human data for the GIP antagonist side of this whole debate.
Okay, so let's shift gears and look at the data. How does this novel mechanism actually perform in the real world? The trial had two main groups, one cohort with obesity and another with both obesity and type 2 diabetes. So for the group without diabetes, the results were pretty stunning. At the highest dose, patients had a mean weight loss of 16.2% after a year. But here's the really interesting part. The paper points out that the weight loss curve hadn't even flattened out by 52 weeks. That suggests there might be even more weight loss to be had with longer treatment. And in the cohort with both obesity and type 2 diabetes, the glycemic control benefits were just as impressive. They saw a mean HbA1c drop of up to 1.6 percentage points. That is a hugely significant improvement, especially when it comes alongside major weight loss in this population that we know is tougher to treat. This table gives us the bigger picture across all the doses. You can see a really clear dose-dependent effect on weight loss in both groups, just blowing placebo out of the water. Now, one thing to note, and this is a pattern we see all the time, is that patients with type 2 diabetes lost a little less weight than those without, but the difference was only about 3 to 4%, and they still hit an incredible mean weight loss of up to 12.3%. That's still a huge win.
Of course, anytime you see efficacy numbers this good, the very next question is, what about safety? What about tolerability? And no surprise here, like with all GLP-1 therapies, the story really comes down to managing those GI side effects.
And the data taught us a really critical lesson about how to dose this drug. The trial arms where they just started patients on the target dose right away with no titration, well, they saw a really high rate of GI side effects. And when you look at the actual numbers, you can see the challenge.
I mean, nausea and vomiting rates hitting 87 and even 92% in some of those no-escalation groups, that's just extremely high. It's not surprising that it led to a lot of people stopping the drug, up to 27% in some arms, which just goes to show how absolutely critical the starting protocol is for this medication.
But here's the good news. The trial also gave us a very clear solution. The groups that used a dose escalation strategy, starting low and slowly titrating up over a few weeks, saw way fewer GI events, and the ones they did have were much less severe.
And the impact of that strategy was just dramatic. Look at this. The number of people quitting because of GI side effects plummeted from as high as 27% all the way down to a much more reasonable 8% when they used dose escalation. And this finding is so important that it's now directly shaping the design of the Phase 3 trials, where everyone is going to be started on a gradual titration schedule.
So, we've looked at the mechanism, the efficacy, the safety. What's the bottom line? What are the big picture takeaways from all this Phase 2 data for those of us in the clinic?
I think it really boils down to these 4 points. Number 1, convenience. A powerful once-a-month injectable is a potential game changer for getting patients to stick with treatment. 2, efficacy. The weight loss is top tier, and it looks like it might not even have peaked at 1 year. 3, for our patients with type 2 diabetes, it offers really impressive glycemic control. And finally, that novel GIP antagonist mechanism, it's opening up a whole new chapter in how we think about metabolic medicine.
And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? This trial shows us that blocking the GIP receptor, as long as you're also hitting the GLP-1 receptor, is a powerful and viable strategy for treating obesity and type 2 diabetes in people. It throws down a direct, fascinating challenge to the GIP agonist approach. So we're left wondering, what is the ultimate role of GIP? And will this new antagonist pathway be a defining feature of the next generation of therapies? You can bet we'll be watching the Phase 3 data very, very closely.